Welcome to Scouting for Growth. Today, I am meeting with Dylan Bourguignon, CEO at Social. Dylan is on a mission to restore customer trust in insurance. With Social, Dylan tells me that with his team, he has developed a digital insurer with a unique model that delivers win-win insurance. We'll ask Dylan a little bit more on what that means. Dylan draws on a variety of skills, including sales, strategy, negotiation, M&A, and finance. With 12 years in strategy and M&A, actually, Dylan worked on over 40 acquisition targets and closed 4. We will talk about Dylan's journey, setting up Social, why he moved into insurance, how useful his sales, strategy, M&A skills has been to scale the business. Why does this mean for Social to have your insurance cake and eat it from an embedded insurance and digital ecosystem viewpoint? Culture, goal alignment, and mindset when working digitally will be covered too. So let's get started. So Dylan, it's such a pleasure to have you with us on Scouting for Growth today.
Thank you for having me.
And let's get started. Tell us a little bit more about you, your journey so far in industry and into the insurance sector, please.
Sure. I was, having been an engineer twice over, I went into strategy consulting and then private equity for 10 years and picked up an MBA on the way. But the key about having been in private equity is for the latter half of it, I was focused on insurance. And I got to understand the entire value chain of insurance and realized how there was a chasm between the consumer experience of insurance and the margins the industry were making. And as an investor, I was looking for businesses that were addressing the issue. Sadly, there weren't any. So that's when I decided to do it myself. And got onto the journey. For me, it was essential to be a fully delegated authority MGA, and it's very hard to obtain, as everyone will know. So I built first Cycle Syndicate, which was a peer-to-peer alternative to bike insurance, which allowed me to build data sets to prove the essence of the model, and then was able to launch Social with a capacity provider, and be able to be a fully delegated authority MGA from day one, and having that control on the value chain for consumers' experience benefit.
So tell us, when you look at your differentiator, you already mentioned that the only way you wanted to build your business was to have this fully delegated authority MGA model to allow you to have more control. Can you tell us a little bit more what that means for Social and for you and your team?
Of course. For us, the key was having control on the customer experience from purchase to claim. And what you quickly realize is that there is no way of fundamentally changing the paradigm for consumers unless you have a control over that entire value chain. And that means policy admin and claims. Distribution can be outsourced, but you got to make sure that you've got the right messaging. And that means that it's and policy admin is pricing and writing of the policies. And whenever you try and change the equation for consumers, if you just try and focus on a single element of them, whether it's distribution, policy admin, or claims, as individual segments of the value chain, you're only optimizing to a suboptimal point. And if you really want to have a step change in customer experience, then you actually have to take control of the entire it and redesign it. And that's what we've done. So we've had a very holistic approach to the insurance problem and redesign the system as a whole, as opposed to just try and optimize a broken system.
Yeah. So you started with really understanding your customer and you build that customer engagement, that system you mentioned, based on the need of the customer rather than, as we often see, with large enterprises, which have been built on a lot of merger and acquisition, um, that broken relationship and often some gaps in the way customers are being dealt with. So tell us a bit more how this M&A expertise has helped you.
But it's not just that, because I think the key here is that it's not just about the customer experience, because yes, that's at the absolute center of what we're doing, but there are also elements of the value chain of insurance and the way the insurance industry works and happening, which are real problematic to change the customer paradigm. So fraud is one of them. I mean, it costs 15-20% of our premium and means that you're often treated like a thief as opposed to a customer when you're claiming. And then you've got the lack of consumer centricity and of product centricity that the industry has. And then finally, you've got misaligned incentives across the value chain. I mean, whether it's policy admin, distribution, or claims, nobody's got really this consumer's interests at the heart of what they're doing. And so what we've done is actually addressed all those issues in our redesign of the consumer experience. And I suppose what my background has allowed me to understand is how each one of these segments of the value chain operate. It was a revelation to me to see that insurance is an extraordinary industry where everyone's making north of 10% EBIT margin. That's not found in any other sector. And yet you had this kind of deeply disgruntled consumer in a premise of the insurance is just a promise that when things go badly, your back's covered. And consumers don't trust that promise. And you're thinking, well, it's broken. And unfortunately, nothing, when I started my journey, was actually focusing on trying to address those issues at all. I mean, the big data, IoT, comparison sites, none of which actually fundamentally changed the paradigm. And now there's a kind of big wave about embedded insurance, which is kind of slightly kind of emperor's new clothes, where we're basically reinventing something that's already existed for a long time. In my mind, it eases distribution, absolutely, but it's so critical to focus on what the customer experience is going to be when they claim, and how is that going to be a good experience. And just selling easily doesn't necessarily translate into phenomenal customer experience when the promise is finally delivered.
So do you go direct to consumer? Tell us a little bit more about your business model.
Yeah, so we go direct to consumer. That's what we started building, and then we started also expanding into B2B2C. And yes, we do embedded insurance, but at the heart is actually it's embedding a solution of insurance that is deeply relevant and consumer centric, as opposed to just enabling a bad product to be sold to a customer. And that's our pet peeve, and our focus is always, it has to be a phenomenal and fundamentally changed customer experience. And so, I mean, B2B2C is just a channel, as well as D2C. And the key core is, what have you created that is valuable to customers? And that's what needs to be focused. And so that we focused on both the creation and implementation, but also in the distribution.
So let's talk about social, the win-win insurance platform, right? Tell us a little bit more about what you're trying to achieve and who is your customer, and what do you mean by building a unique business model which drive win-win interaction with your customers.
So what does win-win mean? It means amazing if you need us and rewards if you don't. Amazing if you need us. It's the product, our insurance solutions are incredibly competitive, up to 40% cheaper than our competition. It's very clear upfront what's covered and not covered, so no bad surprises. The policies are actually written for consumers, like a 15-year-old can understand them. And by the way, they are designed to pay out, not to trip you up. And then when you claim, it's not a question of days or weeks. For us, our leitmotif is 24 to 72 hours, which means that we're up to 10 times faster than some of our competition in terms of fulfilling claims, and our end-to-end claims experience. And we aim to even make that even faster. And we will be, we are on the journey to fully automate claims end-to-end. So that's if you need us. But the thing is, like 95% of people don't claim on insurance, so what's in it for them? And through our model, you can get up to 80% money back every year if you and your friends don't claim. And so it becomes win-win. Either you claim and it's great, or you don't claim and you can get money back. What's not to love?
Yeah, that's interesting in a sense that you mentioned you and your friends. So I assume that there is probably a pool mechanism where you can insure things with.
So it's not a pool, it's a network model. So this is kind of, think about it like Mutual 3.0. The idea is I buy a policy, I'm covered. I can then connect to my friends and family who I trust. And every time I connect to them, me and my friends both get £10 added to each of our reward pots. I can connect to as many people as I want, so can my friends, until my reward pot is worth 80% of the value of my premium. And at the end of the year, if me and my friends have not claimed, the money in my pot is paid out to me. So the difference is not a group model, because my friend will be then connecting to their close friends and family, and I might not have any connection with them, and or I won't have any, my pot will not be dependent on their connections, but only to the people I connect directly to. So it's yeah, so it's
an important nuance, right? Because it's networked, and so therefore the relationship is important, but it's applying the network economy principle, which takes me to, when you look at the design in your platform, and you already touched upon embedded, so it would be great to hear your view around the theme, the buzzword, what is embedded for you and your business, but also what that means in terms of digital ecosystem. So I assume to deliver your promise, you must have partners and others supporting you in fulfilling your customer promise.
Yes, so so I suppose embedded insurance, it's B2B2C distribution. That's existed for a very long time in insurance, nothing new. I think about Carphone Warehouse. Well, Dixon's was probably selling kind of insurance to laptops and stuff in the early 90s. So there really is nothing new about just selling through a partner. I think the difference is now is the ability to make it very seamless in a consumer experience as you purchase. You can also, as distribution partners, build better understanding of their customers. You can then use some of that information to provide a more relevant and bespoke solution for the customers in terms of insurance. And I think there's going to be there's all sorts of I think there are some challenges that the industry needs to be mindful of, and that's basically over insurance. So, if you're insuring for loss, theft, damage for every single item that you buy, if it's going to be a couch, for example, well, is that not covered by your home contents insurance? So I think there's an element of making sure that the solutions we're creating for consumers are relevant. I also believe it's really important that that it's not just about the sales mechanism, which is focused on, but that we're also delivering on a kind of superb claim experience, which needs to be as seamless as the purchasing. And going back to the point I made earlier, some of the issues you have to figure out is, from a holistic perspective, is how do you address the fraud, the lack of consumer centricity, and the misaligned incentives across the value chain. So, which is why I really want to encourage any distribution partner to really think very clearly and carefully about the insurance partners they engage with, because it's not just about an easy purchase experience. It's more than that, and otherwise it will be detrimental to the brand that is offering the insurance solution in the first place. So yeah, so we are working with several partners, whether it's fintech or retailers, and offering insurance in those ways. Yeah, I think it's, for us, it's just another distribution channel. There are many other channels that we can go through, and but B2B2C distribution is an established channel in insurance, and one which actually does give scale, and which is therefore valuable for insurance businesses.
So B2B2C, ways to drive scale. You also mentioned claims, really owning that claims process so that you can actually achieve your SLAs of 24 to 72 hours, which is interesting because, not all MGAs will actually manage their claims, but you actually made the choice to drive that customer experience by owning that claims process as well. Recently, I was talking to Andrew Corns and others in our sector. And what I realized is those who actually build a platform to also own the claims process actually are driving differentiation for themselves, because they are in control of the timing of when they can fulfill their customer promise.
I mean, we're always dependent on third parties. I mean, for example, I'm not going to be starting to go vertically integrated and own courier systems, and distribution in that way. So we are going to be dependent on the likes of DPD or Hermes and so on. But that is often where the kind of the overall experience trips up. But there's so much one can do, and we've got to be reliant on, as you mentioned, the ecosystem in that regard. So it is about working with the right partners and narrowing down the list of partners to make sure that they are delivering on the tough SLAs that we set ourselves, to be delivering kind of superior experience to consumers.
So what are the products which have differentiated you, Dylan, your team, and Social, and why have you selected those specific offers?
So we're really becoming the possessions insurer of choice. So we started the journey in mobile phone insurance, and we've broadened that scope to all the items that you have in and out of your home. And we are also going to be insuring your home over the coming months. So it's and that's effectively kind of the ecosystem that we're focused on, and then we're going to derive all sorts of kind of insurance solutions from that. So whether it's an extended warranty across a variety of objects. It might or might not include damage. You can then create other insurance solutions which might be also relevant. So if you're traveling, you need to have your stuff with you and travel. Those things also need to be covered as you're going away. So it's looking at it from a consumer perspective as the stuff that really matters to you as a consumer, and making sure that they are protected.
So you started your journey as a business executive 20 years ago. You move into investment world, and now you are in insurance. Can you tell us how has been your journey to be accepted within our insurance space? I think Social now is probably 6 years.
Yeah. Well, the point is, I suppose I got to connect with the industry for over 5 years prior to building Social, and I think it was essential. I remember at business school, one prof told us, don't go off and build a business just coming out of business school. Go and identify a sector you want to work in, and then build relationships in there, and then go off and do it. And it made it really clear to me when I started, because when you started off, especially in any sector, it's everyone's got a network, and if you're the new kid on the block, you've got to figure out a way of getting attention from anyone. And so if you've already built relationships in the past, then it allows you to kind of open doors, and get to understand also how people think. I think many people, actually there were other players at the time when we started who had the idea of creating a something similar to social, but broke their nose on every single underwriter's door, because if you go to an underwriter and say to them, I've got a great idea, we are going to give money back to the good customers, the underwriter just looks at you and say, you're out of your mind, and shows you the door. And that's what happened to them. I knew how the industry operated, and I realized that if you don't go to the underwriters with data, which proves that it works, then it's going to be a very difficult conversation. And even then, it's not an easy one, but at least you're allowed to stay in the room to have a conversation rather than thrown out.
So you have made the underwriter your friend and other part of the insurance ecosystem. Can you tell us your journey with the investors as well?
Journey with the investors? What do you mean?
Yes, so when you look at social to build and scale a business, you have partly done it from building a business model which is reliable and which is sustainable. And I assume that you were able to seek funding as well from the investors. So how has been your journey finding funding from investors, and how have you selected them, and how are they making you successful still today?
Yeah, so I suppose I started this journey before insurtech was a word. And by and large, insurance is a sector that most investors shy away from. We've got our own vocabulary. We talk about premium as opposed to revenue, and it goes on that way. And so it becomes loss ratio as opposed to the inverse of a gross profit on a policy. So there's just lots of kind of things to get your head around. Actually, I remember that because when I was first assigned to the insurance sector, I was thinking, oh my goodness, why is there not a kind of an initiating coverage paper on this sector to understand and get your head around it? Anyway, so you get to understand it by being in it for a period of time. So it does mean that many investors actually shy away from it. And it's also not a thing that many angels want to talk about when they go around the dinner table. It's like, yeah, I've invested in insurance. That's so exciting. So it wasn't kind of the panacea when I first started the journey in terms of appetite for it. That said, people recognized the pain points and the size of the market, which does make it exciting, but it had to be a narrower focus of investors. And then afterwards, what I've really focused on is getting investors who have actually mostly been operators before, who understand what it is to build a business. Because I think especially in the early years, it's very challenging in many ways. It's super rewarding because you do everything from HR, FD, CEO, cleaning person, whatever it might be. There is no title, but there's also there is a fine line between following opportunities and being distracted. And however disciplined you might be, it is really important to be supported in making sure that you're always seeing the wood from the trees and staying on course. And that's what my investors, who I brought in as advisors, basically as a board trader, as a advisory committee, to really make sure that keep me on straight and narrow. And that was from day one. And I think I've been really blessed to have really supportive investors who have been with us and standing by us through thick and thin. And I think the last few years have definitely shown what thick and thin might be, because the pandemic was no mean feat for all parties. And And we had really great support from our investors when that hit, and that was just really, really warm.
Which is, shows, how important to select your investors strategically, that, as you said, are with you, alongside you when the time are good and the time are less good,
yeah,
and are able to support you during that journey. And that has been, a statement which has been made by many of the different tech ventures within our insurance space, who the one, some have restructured, some have consolidated, but the one who have been able to survive and actually thrive, I've had the support of really strong investors, supporting them, guiding them, also doing their own due diligence around different markets and different organizations to actually bring the insight needed to actually scale and still grow the business. So you're absolutely right. What does that mean in terms of operations? So when you look at Social, your team, the way you've built the business, it would be great if you could give us some insight and some tips as to how you've been able to build a strong team to surround you and sustain you for the past few years.
It is entirely the team to why we're here. It's been remarkable because we've been very, very, very lean, at times far too lean, and their sheer dedication and focus has been just absolutely astounding and remarkable. And I think that stems from the mission that we've got. We really believe in it. We are here to restore consumer trust in insurance, and we it's not just hot, nice words on a piece of paper. We absolutely live it. So I think the key has been to hire against a set of values. And we took the values really important. And I know, especially for kind of old school management style, values is a very kind of airy-fairy, kind of slightly kind of nebulous concept that sometimes is perceived as HR needing to justify what they're doing, but it is absolutely at the core. And it was really instilled by a friend of mine who built Culture Gene, and he had looked at and supported businesses in the tech space for decades, and what he had recognized is that the companies which had a clear sense of their DNA, of their values, it was just a lot easier to recruit and also have higher retention and higher engagement. And so, in our first year, we were only 5 of us. We actually established what our values were, and and it was the individual values that constituted what the team values were. Now, I hired every single one of them, so it was pretty much aligned with mine, of course. And then from then on, we've just always, whenever we recruited someone, it was always we recruit against those values, and we're very direct, even with candidates, and saying, either our values are those that you espouse naturally, or they're not. And if they're not, you might be the best person in the world, and we have no doubt you probably are, because we wouldn't be speaking otherwise. But if it's not the right match, it's just not going to work. And so, and that's a very different approach to I suppose if you think about the kind of the background I had before in which was much more focused around performance and individual performance, rather than necessarily the values and the kind of the establishment of values of the individuals and matching that with the teams. So it wasn't kind of new for me, but it has transpired as being really, really powerful, and including in the pandemic, when we moved to fully remote, having previously been fully office, we saw an increase in productivity. And if anything, I had to figure out ways of making sure people weren't working too hard and actually taking time off for themselves and personal time, because otherwise they're going to burn out. So there's but that's kind of it was very seamless moving into that remote work, because there was a strong sense of cohesion. Everyone, were very much self-starters, and so it was just a very natural transition. And now we're moving to hybrid now,
which is great. So now you are moving to hybrid workplace, enabling your team to work from an office, probably a few days a week, but then with your trust in them and probably the transparency you've created around your organization, enabling that working remotely aspect of things. One thing you actually have highlighted, which is goal alignment. I was meeting recently with a group of investors, and actually still it remains the number one criteria for success, goal alignment, in making sure that the team participate and understand why you set very specific values and beliefs, but those still needs to be owned by the organization. And it's the best way to qualify, identify people who fit within the team, or people, even though they might be strong, who might not fit within the team. And what also I've seen is today, in the world we are in, it's often about, credibility, driving authenticity, trust, transparency amongst internal members of the team, but also with your customer, and your customer is a consumer. So therefore, he or she will be looking with that goal alignment when they make a choice to go for social, I assume, too.
Yeah, I mean, the customer at the center is one of the core values that we have, needless to say. Do the right thing for your customer and do the right thing for your colleagues. I think it's, so there's different aspects. Goal alignment, there's a North Star we focus on, and that means that everyone's rowing in the same direction. The values is something that, you're right, you have to embed, and it's not just about having a bunch of posters that says these are our values. So we bring them into conversations, into everything, in the kind of the way we structure our appraisals and the way we kind of even catch up every week. It's about reinforcing, who's demonstrated some of the kind of what values over the last week, and reminding ourselves all the time what the values are and what they are. So it has to be lived by the organization. It can't just be some document that's left on the drive along with the staff handbook that you only look like maybe once a year if you're lucky. And then in terms of, actually, you were mentioning about the office, or going in several days a week, it's even more, I suppose we're kind of even more flexible than that. And I suppose I'll share some of the way we're operating, is we believe there's real value in us getting together, and so we figure out, okay, so how often do we need to go in? And to be honest, we're a growth mindset organization, and whilst that applies for any product, any marketing, any underwriting that we do, it doesn't matter. Everything is always test, learn, iterate. We're also doing that from a kind of a human capital perspective. And so what we're doing at the moment is we've got offices where people can go in at any point in time, and then everyone has to turn up twice a month on specific days where we'll all get together. And that really, the purpose of that is really kind of bringing people together in a way that you can actually create a bit more structured, water cooler moments. And we also have those water cooler moments throughout the week on a remote basis. But it's about making sure that everyone can really enjoy each other's presence. Because actually what we realized during the pandemic is what we missed most is just being with each other, because we really like each other. So that's kind of how we're operating. But, that's right now, might change over the next 6 months, and we can talk about it at that point.
Yeah, you're right. We are deploying. I did a piece of research with a company called Eventy, and what was fascinating about this piece of research is that it said that 71% of employees today would rather work remotely than get a promotion so work anywhere in the world, then get into promotion. And 13% only of people wanted to work from an office, and from various reasons, children, not enough space to actually work, and all those things. And finding that right balance around remote and hybrid, I think, will be important, because you need those water cooler moments, which actually takes me to my next question around how do you implement ESG? How do you deploy, environmental, social, and governance structure? It's a hot buzzword of the year, and I assume, working with an insurance company yourself, capital providers, they probably ask you as well as growth ventures, how you make that sure that you can be ESG compliant.
So, well, first of all, and what we've created on the social side is very, very powerful, because we are enabling, and the way we underwrite also is non-traditional ways, which means that we are not excluding the less wealthy. Most insurance companies just like to have middle class, wealthy individuals, and they're just running after those same customers. We've been able to figure out how to serve all segments of society, and that's especially except for the high net worth, where we're staying away for the time being. But that allows us to contribute in that way. We are also very mindful on the carbon footprint, and we're about to undergo a piece of work to understand exactly what it looks like, and actually not just from a organization perspective, but from a service perspective, because it's easy to, if you just look at us, we're just a bunch of people with a laptop. And so then you need to figure out whether your data centers, how are they being what energy are they using, whether it's renewable or not. And then kind of trying to come back to exactly what is the carbon footprint, which is going to be very low. I mean, we're paperless in the first place, so it's literally just laptops and Wi-Fi networks. So that means that it's low, but I think from us, what we look at it is from a holistic perspective. So, for example, on mobile phone insurance, we had started off by replacing even cracked screens, damaged phones, and because that allowed us to provide a really fast claim service. Well, first of all, we kind of went to our customer base and actually found that they were quite happy to wait a couple of days to actually have the same device back. And also, the reason we were keen to find out from them whether that was okay is because it's a lot more eco-friendly. I mean, you're not having to kind of create another device. You're just using parts from previous devices that would have been kind of recycled. And so there's a real sense for us, and it's been a kind of an ongoing journey, and we didn't need to have ESG as an important label. We were looking at this 3-4 years ago. So it's not something new. We believe in, we want to leave a legacy, not just in our service, but in a positive impact on the planet. So, and we think about it kind of in a holistic way in that regard.
So you already been, leading the way around upcycling, recycling, repairing rather than replacing, I guess. So where do you see the future of insurance for us? Where do you see the future of technology? How can we continue to serve our client better by understanding, using your crystal ball, Dylan? Where do you see where we are going now in insurance?
Isn't it societal as a whole, which is we need to be looking at more sustainable sources of energy. And then when we look about logistics, we need to figure out more sustainable means of transport, and then understand what the implication. And we're obsessed about customer experience. And when we started with mobile phones, I mean, people can't live without a phone for very long. So you've got to figure out how you're going to still deliver a great service at the same. So the way we look at it is actually trying to we can't change the industry. I can't go to DPD and say, hey guys, I'm a small player here, so it's hard for me to say, but doesn't stop us from having those conversations and just keep on putting pressure on all segments of value chain to make sure that we are all rowing in the same direction. And I can't expect them, in the same way as I can't expect the world to change overnight. I can't expect them to change overnight, but I'm going to be keen that they do it as soon as possible.
So when you look at other founders, the clients you work with, so the insurers you work with, the clients you're aiming to serve, what would be the lesson learned from Dylan that we can leave them with? Maybe your 3 top tips.
Top tips about what?
About business, about what you have learned through your personal journey as to building successful business.
So I think it might be trite, but there's always going to be more naysayers than supporters, and not to feel, and actually, in a way, you should take it as a mark of confidence, but make sure that it's founded in truth as opposed to hot air. And I say that because, when we started our journey, many investors just said, "Oh, you're trying to you're taking too much of the value chain here. You should be just focusing on one segment, and then you can move from there." And the thing is, if you do that, you're not solving the problem, and you just it's pretty pointless in my mind. So a lot of people say, no, just focus on one segment and optimize on that, and then you can start adding the other ones. But if you've got a holistic, systemic approach to solving the problem, that mindset won't work. And so it can be disheartening when you're raising your funds to keep on saying those, but eventually you'll find someone who's got a different mindset and will recognize the value. And that's and I think that's just tenacity is required. That's number one. Number two, people. I mean, ultimately it is entirely going to be the people you're going to hire. They're the ones who are going to be able to deliver. There's nothing that I can deliver by myself. And so it means it needs to be a core focus, both in recruitment and then in nurturing thereafter. And then finally, I think it's about, my top tip is you are going to go through a roller coaster of emotions, which is going to be really from the biggest highs of your life to the biggest lows. And I think a key saying that I really love is, all is well in the end. And if it's not well, it's not the end. And very often you will find that that tough patch will pass, and soon you will have forgotten of the tough patch. But it builds your resilience over time, which I've now understood after 6 years.
Yes, building resiliency. I think I hear that a lot from founders, tech founders, that goes up and down, and some days you want to break everything and you are not feeling good, but at the end of the day, every step of the way you're learning, and that is something no one can take away from you, whatever choice you are making for your future. So I know you have a lovely family, Dylan. So my last question to you is, looking at Dylan today, right? You have been in finance, you've been working for 20 years, you've built your own startup, a very successful platform. So let's go back and look at Dylan at 6 years of age. What would you tell that 6 years of age Dylan about his future and where he could be today?
Well, be yourself and don't stop believing.
Amazing wise word. So if people want to find you, Dylan, where should they go?
I am on Twitter at db_entrepreneur. wearesocial.com is the company, and you will find that on Twitter, a handle too. I think our Facebook is there too. Otherwise on LinkedIn, Dylan Bourguignon, not many others out there, especially in insurance.
Absolutely. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for your time and sharing your passion, your found passion in insurance, and the wisdom of building your own venture over the course of the past 6 years. So thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Pleasure being here.
If you like this podcast, subscribe now, share with your friends, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a 5-star review. Also, if you want to cover any specific subject with me, contact me on Instagram under Sabine VdL Officials or LinkedIn under Sabine VdL. Thank you.